Hello and welcome to Cask Tech Tips. My name's Taylor and today we're going to disassemble a valve to change out some seals. You may find yourself needing to do a procedure like this if you're seeing issues with excessive foam, perhaps a leaking valve, maybe a lack of foam. All these types of problems are typically solved with refreshing the seals in the valve. Alright, so to change the seals in your valve, it's a fairly easy process, but there is a sequence of operations to do it smoothly and efficiently. Step one is going to be to remove the probe plate from the bottom of the fill head. Yours may look a little different, but the procedure is going to be the same across most of our automated lines. Once the probe plate is out, next step is going to be to remove the knurled retaining ring that secures the fill tube to the valve body assembly. Once removed, you can then wiggle the fill tube out. There's a couple O-rings that hold that in place. Give it a little wiggle as you pull, it will come out. Next step will be to remove the product supply via this brass nut here. Once that's free, you can then push all the valve internals out towards the center of the fill head. It is the only way they come out. You cannot draw them back this way. Once they're out, you can then inspect them and determine whether or not the foam shuttle gaskets need to be replaced. Same thing with the fill tube O-rings. So to get a little bit more detailed, let's bring you in a little bit closer and we'll show you step by step on what that looks like. So on each corner of your probe plate, there's going to be a screw. On some of the newer machines, you're going to need a 3mm Allen key. Yours might be Imperial. We're a global company. We got fasteners from all over the place. So once these screws are removed, that will drop the plate. As many of you might be familiar with. You want to try and support this as best you can when it comes down. You're not going to do any damage, but with anything, just take care, take your time. Try not to damage any components. For this job, you can leave the probe plate wiring attached. Just let it dangle there like that. So up in here, you'll see the knurled rings. Each valve has one, and each one is going to need to be taken out in order to get the internals out. I do find it easiest to twist these tubes out of the way, although you do you. Sometimes you can get away with just using your hands. In this case, no go. So what I'll grab in this case is a set of channel lock pliers. As best you can, just try and bite on either side of it, gently rotate, and that should start to turn. There is a spring washer behind there, so you will need to rotate it a little bit to get past that washer's compression. Once you do, the ring should come right out. Now at this stage, because of the way, or the spacing here, you're not going to be able to get this nut down and out entirely. So leave it on the tube, swing the other one out of the way, and you want to pull towards yourself or push, depending on which one you're working on, as you rotate it. And just like that, tube comes out. This is a good point to inspect the O-rings on the fill tube itself. There's 3 on this unit that you can see. These 2 provide the primary seal. These seal product in here, and these ones don't usually go, but anytime you've gotten to this point, change them out anyway. It's a great preventative point. This O-ring down in the chamfered section of the fill tube is the one that is likely going to cause leaking valves. If you ever see that you've got product dripping out of the tube when the machine's sitting idle, most of the time, that's the seal in question. This is pretty easy to remove. If you've purchased a replacement set from Cask, all you need to do is dig this out with a little screwdriver or a pick. Just be careful to do your best not to damage the walls of the chamfered section, as that could create a leak that O-ring is not going to seal. Replacing it is very simple. Pop the new one in, drive it around with your thumb to make sure it's fully seated, and if that's all that you're doing, at this point you can put this back in the equal and opposite way that we took it apart. Now to get the internals of the shuttle out, the next step I should say, is going to be to remove this brass nut. The reason this needs to be done is the valve internals need to be pushed through the valve body. You're not going to have access to do this otherwise. Trust me, it's a pain. Same process, remove the nut, wiggle your your inlet supply out. That will give you access to remove the internals. Now that you're at this stage, we're ready to pull the internals of the shuttle out, or the valve out. I find it easiest to use a small little screwdriver and get into the outermost spring. Once you've done that, gently push and keep your hand up front to catch everything. There's going to be 4 pieces that come out of this valve. You got a big spring, a little spring, your beer shuttle, which does have a small little hole through it. It's actually what creates your foam. And likely the leaky culprit, foam shuttle. So if you see on this one's new, so it's going to look great. But this is the gasket in question. This is integral and part of the foam shuttle and is not available separately, unfortunately. If you notice any rings, depressions, cracks, if you rub this foam shuttle against your finger and you get a black residue, all of these are signs that that gasket is wearing out and may not be doing its job properly. If you do find any of these, the solution is to replace this entirely. And even though this might look good, toss it. Now that we've gone over the inspection points, we'll get into reassembly. And it's going to look very much the same, just backwards. All right, we've got new parts. We're ready to throw it all back together. Your PX2 valve, or some of you may call that the foaming valve, the internals go together in a specific way. And we're going to reference the middle of the fill head, this side, as our reference point. So the first piece to go in is your big spring. Next is little shuttle. And you want that foam gasket to be facing the center of the head. That's very important, otherwise it's not going to seal correctly. Next piece is your little spring. Lastly, the beer shuttle. So when they're in your hand or on the table, everything kind of looks like this. Reassembly looks as easy as just sliding them in one by one. So first we got big spring, little shuttle with the gasket facing towards the fill head, the middle of the fill head. Little spring can go in whichever direction. And your beer shuttle with the large tapered bullet end facing the center of the head. Those are going to sit in there loose, to be expected. Assuming you've replaced the O-rings on this fill tube, these are ready to go in as well. Now remember, those 2 sealing rings are going to give you a bit of resistance, but all you're going to do is just push those in and then reattach the knurled ring to secure everything in place. I would recommend to go as tight as you can with your fingers. That spring washer is going to provide much pressure to keep that fill tube from wiggling around in space. That's all you really need, and over time those threads can develop some corrosion and become more difficult to remove. So you don't want to over tighten them, A, because it's not necessary, B, next time you get in here it's going to be more difficult to take apart. Next step is going to be to reattach your product supply line. Again, just push that in, keep paying attention not to rip that O-ring. It's easier than you would think. Replace your washer and brass nut. This one you do want to put a tool on. I would use a crescent wrench or an appropriately sized wrench if you choose. And once this is finger tight, you want to give this no more than about a quarter turn. That's all you need. The O-ring on the outside of this supply spout provides product sealing. And these are designed to rotate just a little bit, because as your fill head actuates up and down, these pipes are going to wiggle a little bit. Next step is going to be to reinstall your probe plate. Now, if you didn't remove the wiring harness and it's in place, all is good. If you did, take note which valve is number 1, which one's number 4, 5, or 6, depending on the machine. The reason that's important is you want the probe at valve 1 to control valve 1. If this is backwards, probe 6 will control valve 1 and your fill levels might wind up being off. So simply align all your fill tubes so they pass through the probe plate. One more thing to pay attention to is to make sure that you don't pinch any of the probe wires between these knurled rings and the probe plate itself. Doing so can create a ground fault issue, which will cause the probe to trigger all on its own. And you may find that a valve does not fill as it's supposed to, even though the can is empty. Quick way to reference that is on the status page, the I/O page, and sometimes the main screen of your machine. And if you don't want to keep watching, we'll just kind of fast forward through this with all 4 of these screws going up. Again, we're going to take the 3mm Allen key, make sure that these are nice and tight. They don't need to be torqued or super tight, but they do need to be secure so that the plate does not fall down. Usually once the lock washer is tight, an additional 1/4 turn, 1/8 of a turn is all you really need. Valves are resealed. Rinse and repeat this process for all of them. The PX1 valve is very much the same. The difference is there's only 1 shuttle per valve. So you have a few less steps, but the process is still exactly the same. Once you're at this stage, give the machine a test. Confirm that you don't have product leaking out of the tube. If you do have product hooked up to the machine, purge everything out and make sure that your foam control is how it used to be or restored to your desirable characteristics. There we have it. Valve seal replacement, step by step. Again, this is a procedure you'll go through if you're having issues with leaking valves, foam control, sometimes uneven fill rates. Work through this procedure. Let us know if you get stuck. You can always call Cask Support or send us an email. If you need parts, call or email us. Happy canning. Best of luck. We'll see you guys next time.